I talk a lot about the Dark Knight films here on the channel, and I also talk a lot about recast roles, which is why today's topic combines both of these subjects as you join me in taking a look back at The Dark Knight's Rachel Dawes and the women who played her. In Batman Begins, the part was portrayed by Katie Holmes, fresh off the creek, whereas in The Dark Knight, the role was recast with Maggie Gyllenhaal as the leading lady. Now, this character isn't from the comics and is original to this set of films specifically, and I think her inclusion is a pretty inspired choice, all things considered. I mean, this character is actually a lot more important than I think a lot of people give it credit for. A lot of the time, she's just written off as being Batman's girlfriend, which is something I myself am guilty of calling her, but that's usually just done for comedic effect. Giving Batman a lifelong friend helps ground Bruce Wayne, which is desperately needed for a man who spends his nightlife in the sky. Rachel is his rock, attempting to tie him down to a social life, stopping the man from getting lost within the myth that he's created. Her inclusion further humanizes this character and gives a false sense of hope for our hero to live a life with some sort of normality, serving not only as a close friend and confidant to Bruce Wayne, but also his primary love interest. Not that Bruce Wayne has ever had a problem with women. In the previous set of Batman films, Bruce had quite the dating life for a man who arguably has no legitimate social life, having a different woman on his arm in each installment. There was a revolving door of love interest for this Batman. But then again, there was also a revolving door of Bruce Waynes for this Batman, so I guess it fits. Now, in contrast to that, in The Dark Knight, the relationship with Rachel is at least more consistent, even if ultimately there wasn't an actual relationship there to speak of. Ironically enough, this delationship was much more substantial. In the first film, Holmes got a lot of hate for her performance, and honestly, I don't think that she was terrible in the role, but I also don't think that she was always believable in the part. She has this very confused way of delivering dialogue. She seems so unsure of what it is that she's saying at every given moment. Ultimately, I would rule her out as being mediocre.
Mediocre?
But I don't think it's entirely her fault. At the time, Katie just didn't seem mature enough for this. She kind of felt like a child wearing their parents' clothing, trying their best to look and act like a real grown-up, but never coming off as anything more than someone playing pretend.
Rachel is more of the on top of things type of girl.
What does that mean?
You can also probably attribute it to her style of acting. While it was right at home in a teen drama, it wasn't necessarily welcomed in a blockbuster Batman flick.
Go-getter, she knows what she wants and she's, doing it.
What does that mean? No one knows what that means.
A lot of the time, she just comes off like a generic damsel in distress, and that's in spite of the movie trying to give her a purpose. She's in need of saving multiple times in the movie, and even at the end when she manages to save herself, it doesn't feel like this grandiose moment that I think it's meant to be, mainly because it's a moment that's undercut by everything else that's going on at the time. This stand up for yourself segment is lost within a sea of other pivotal plot points happening at the same time. And it's also immediately forgotten, and there's not a lot of attention put on it because they're trying to get to the next story beat. It doesn't give you time to properly process and digest this, and what should have been development for the character is lost within disinterest for the character. Not to mention that she lacks any sort of romantic chemistry with her alleged love interest. I don't know, I just don't see sparks flying between these two. They do seem to have some sort of connection. I can buy a long-standing friendship between her and him, but they really come off as platonic childhood friends. And the romance between the two feels a bit forced, which is unfortunate given this character's importance to the plot. Rachel is a deciding factor in Bruce's mission. She is one of the very few people who can actually influence the Dark Knight. His love for her is so strong that the mere sight of her causes him to uncharacteristically break character, completely dropping his act in her presence. There's definitely something meaningful here, but I can't buy it past a friendship. That just doesn't seem to be the energy between these two. However, I can't say the same for her successor. In my opinion, and from what I can tell it's a pretty common one, this role was a lot more meaningful when Maggie Gyllenhaal was portraying the part. Maggie Gyllenhaal gives Rachel a bit more personality, and a lot more of a backbone. This Rachel was not shy about standing up for herself. Like her predecessor, she was job-obsessed and justice-motivated. But now she seems a lot more legitimate, for lack of a better word. Her passion for her work comes through. And sure, that's helped by having more scenes that see her in her chosen profession, but I think it's also helped greatly by the way that Maggie carried herself. She had a level of professionalism, and you could tell that she wasn't just reciting lawyer jargon. She feels as if she's deeply involved in her line of work. Although, considering this, I have to question the character's choice not to date Bruce, because she feels that he's too involved in his crime-fighting career, when she herself is too involved in her crime-fighting career, and then goes on to date Harvey Dent, who is equally, if not more, involved in his crime-fighting career. That one still got me scratching my head and rubbing my chin like this image of Batman that I'm showing you. And I know how much you guys love this image.
Oh, make it stop! Make it stop!
I don't know, maybe she's just more into blondes and needed a way to let Bruce down. Could be. But that part has always confused me. Now, speaking on the romance, or no-mance between the two, I actually happen to buy it a lot more with this actress. I believe the romance between her and Bruce. Well, past tense. It genuinely feels like there's some unresolved issues and feelings there, complicated by a long-standing friendship and very different yet similar lives. This Rachel is walking a tightrope, because while she loves Bruce, she's clearly in love with Harvey Dent, and she doesn't want to hurt the person that she's known her whole life. This complicates matters, and creates a love triangle that doesn't feel too staged. It's a very real scenario, and not one that anyone would want to find themselves in. Despite them having even less of a romance in this film than they did in the first one, it feels much more like a romance in this film than it did in the first one. And that's just based on how illegitimate the first pairing felt. Maggie's Rachel doesn't feel like a plot point, even though she kinda is, because she's really only around to follow up the end of Batman Begins and create an additional tension between two of the leads. But it's not as brutally blatant as it was prior, and a big part of that is because of how likable Maggie's Rachel is. I'm not saying that she was the life of the party here, but she was at least, a person. Aside from her place in the story and her place in Bruce's life, these two characters are not at all alike, despite them actually being the same exact character. It's a part played by two different people with two very different approaches to it. And because of that, there's a lot more to contrast these two than there is to compare. They tried to dress this actress up like the previous one, they tried to stylize her hair the same, and in spite of that, never once does this feel like the same character. And you know what? Maybe that's for the best. From a continuity standpoint, it's a little bit jarring, but from a pure entertainment perspective, it's hard to argue against the fact that they did the right thing when the second film came out. With all that being said, that was The Dark Knight's two very different Rachels. And if you like this video and want to see a video on The Dark Knight's Catwoman, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
"Has the cat got your tongue?"
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.